Hello, and welcome to patch 25.S1.3. This patch has some good changes that I believe will really make the game healthier and overall more balanced with some of the weaker runes, champions, and nerf some strong champions and builds. Before we get started though, 98% of people that watch my videos aren't subscribed, and I would greatly appreciate it if you just hit that button. It is completely free and you're coming back anyway, so why not hit it? Also, I am still offering free coaching VOD reviews for anyone that would like one. Just go into the description of this video and find my Discord name and add me so we can get one started for you. Anyway, let's first talk about something that doesn't really change the game too much for the general player base, but is a great change for content creators and pros. League will be introducing a streamer mode. This will make it so account names will be hidden throughout the game and will only show up in the end screen. This should help streamers have an easier time of not getting stream sniped to a point. This is a good addition, but most streamers that play this game in higher elos like Masters, Grandmasters, and Challengers will still have a higher chance of getting stream sniped. Still, overall welcoming change, but hopefully they can find more methods. The first big change we have is that the attack speed cap is moving from 2.5 to 3.0. So sad that this doesn't help my champ at all, as Bel'Veth already has no cap to her attack speed, but this helps out a lot of higher attack speed champs, mostly ADCs. If you don't know what 2.5 means and how 3.0 is better for attack speed, it is just a ratio to seconds, so 2.5 autos per second to 3 autos per second. Next, we have some system changes to champion bounties. The words Riot chose can sometimes be confusing though. Lead required to begin positive bounty suppression has been decreased by 60%, and lead required to fully remove bounties from losing team decreased by 33%. These two are the most confusing. Just know that this makes it less likely for the losing team to get a bounty. The last one is a nice change as well. When a game is so far behind for a team, they start to get objective bounties, which lets the losing team have a better chance of coming back with extra gold per objective, and also will now get rid of any bounties that the losing team had already. Overall, losing teams will have an easier time coming back as they won't be getting bounties if one of them is ahead. Now, let's talk about dragons. Some of these dragons have been overperforming others and some have been pretty lackluster, so Riot has some changes for the Chemtech Soul and Cloud Soul. Chemtech Soul got a buff. When the team that has it is below 50% health, they get a 13% damage increase and damage reduction rather than 11%. For Cloud Soul, the passive movement speed will now be decreased from 20% to 15%. Those weren't the only epic monsters that got some changes though. The Void Grub's buff will now be doing less damage. Atakhan, but just the Voracious one, will have the extra gold on takedown decreased from 40 to 25 gold. It will also now heal you fully rather than going to your base health, but also it will take you 15 seconds until you are fully revived. That is a lot better compared to how strong it was before at the start of the season. It seems like a pretty substantial nerf, but I'll just have to wait and see how big of an impact it will have once the player base gets used to it. Those are all the changes that the game systems had and epic monsters, so let's move on to the champions. I won't go too in depth on some of these changes as you can read it for yourself, but I will go over the most important ones. Firstly, Cassiopeia got another nerf. This time her Q and W damage has had their AP ratios decreased. Evelynn gets another buff. Her E is getting another buff where her E damage, instead of giving 1.5% AP ratio or 2.5% AP ratio for the empowered, will now give a 1.5% extra damage per 100 AP for the unempowered version and 2.5% per 100 AP for the empowered version. It's a mouthful, but what does this mean? Basically, it means every 100 AP she gets, she will get an extra 1.5% or 2.5% target max HP damage. So if she has 100 AP, she will get an extra 1.5% or 2.5%, but if she has 200 AP, she will get 3% or 5% extra target max HP damage. Honestly, these past few buffs could put her back into meta, and I would say she could be a solid pickup for your champ pool. Galio gets a nerf with a decrease of his base health. Kayn is back again this patch for another buff. This one targets only regular base Kayn and blue Kayn. His Q base damage will be buffed on the later levels. Since you max his ability first anyways, it is quite a good buff. Jax is getting a buff to his health growth, base mana regen, and increase R base damage on his third attack autos. Jayce is getting a pretty big change to multiple parts of him. It isn't necessarily a nerf for regular AD Jayce, but tank Jayce will be feeling these nerfs as the base damage of the abilities have gone down, and to compensate, his AD scaling on these abilities were increased. Just know if you build him AD, he will be fine, but the tank build will feel a lot worse. His fortune got a tiny nerf to her armor and her armor growth, making her squishier overall. Nasus is getting a buff to his passive lifesteal, going from 9, 15, 21% to 12, 18, 24%. This will help him sustain in lane longer rather than getting poked out easily. Quinn gets a buff to her W attack speed increase. Earlier levels are the same, but the later levels are quite substantial. Since you max this ability first anyways, level 9 will feel really good on her. Rakan's W cooldown in the early levels has been decreased. Rel got a base health and armor growth decrease, which will make her less oppressive in the early levels, and also make her less tanky in the endgame. Samira got a pretty small buff to her E. The attack speed she gets after using it will now last longer. Honestly, this is only a buff to lower Ealer Samira players, as it will help them reach their R stacks better and more reliably. Skarner gets a nerf to his armor growth and the stun duration of his E. Swain will be getting a buff this patch for his passive max health bonus and for his AP ratio on his E ability. The Rat Teemo will be getting a nerf to his E on hit ability. It will feel more substantial in the early ranks, but will go back to its original power once it hits its final rank. This will make laning against Teemo much easier, but doesn't make him unreliable later on. Thresh will be getting a base health increase and an E damage increase per soul. Viego got a little nerf to his base AD by just 3 points. Wukong's W cooldown will be increased and his E will now give him less attack speed than before. And that was all the changes for the champions, and I agree with most of them. Jayce's tank build will probably become dead. Viego needed a nerf, and this one is small, but maybe it is enough, I'm not too sure. Wukong definitely needed a nerf, and these feel way more substantial and will require the player to get used to the changes. Now let's talk about the 2 items that got nerfed, which is Bloodsong and Zazak's Realm Spike. The Bloodsong's damage increase will now be decreased, and the duration will be shorter. Honestly, I like this change, as this was the main reason stuff like Elise, LeBlanc, and Assassins in general were able to become supports, and still one-shot anyone. This will be a nerf to Pyke as well, but I'm not complaining. Zazak's AP ratio will now be 15% rather than 20%, which is a substantial nerf to AP supports like Zyra, Lux, and many others that felt too strong. The last thing for this patch is the rune changes for the Domination Tree. The Domination Tree has been pretty lackluster and underutilized, so Riot is buffing all 3 keystones. Electrocute will have its damage increased at all stages in the game. Dark Harvest's base damage and bonus damage per soul will be increased, and lastly, Hail of Blade's melee attack speed will be getting a buff and the cooldown will be lowered. These changes feel nice and will help make these keystones more viable to run on some characters and change some playstyles. And that is all the changes for this patch. If you liked this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing. If you have any comments about my opinions, leave a comment so we can discuss it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope this season is treating you well. Good luck on climbing.